My name is Jason, and this is Just Watches. Today we have the first Astron on the channel. Now this is a watch I saw on Instagram and got a bit obsessed with. This is a limited edition Seiko Astron Radio Wave Solar. This was released alongside a GPS version, and the GPS version is to mark the 10th anniversary of Seiko Astron GPS Solar watches. However, before we get to the review, if you're enjoying the contents of this channel, I invite you to subscribe, and if you're enjoying the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much. So for price and availability, at the time of this recording, these are still available and run just shy of $1,000. The case is 43mm in diameter, 48mm lug to lug, but the solid end links do extend past the ends of the watch, so the true lug to lug distance is 51.5mm, and then it's only 12mm thick. However, this watch does use an integrated style bracelet, so the lug width opening is a peculiar 14mm. I don't know why you'd want to, but this will make switching out this bracelet incredibly difficult. Finally, as this watch is made of titanium, sized for my 6 3/4 inch wrist, it weighs in at a featherweight 94 grams. Now, the case and bracelet are coated with Seiko super hard coating. It's really hard to find information on this particular coating, but it's probably around the same strength as DiaShield, which is 2 to 3 times harder than stainless steel. So it will ward off scratches, but I don't think it's impervious to scratches. What is interesting is while the finish is mostly brushed, there are areas where the coating has been polished, such as the chamfers along the top and bottom of the mid case. There are pushers on the right side for operation of the watch, which also have high polished chamfers. Now, finally, the crown is also high polish, and the ceramic bezel has a shiny finish. Altogether, this adds a bit more dimensionality to the case than you might first expect. While the case integrates very nicely to the bracelet, the case is quite flat and doesn't wear as nicely as some of the Seiko diver cases. The saving grace is that the all black finish does make this watch wear slightly smaller than you would expect at 43mm. The integrated style bracelet starts at 21mm before tapering down to 18mm and then jumping back to 20mm at the clasp. The articulation along the back of the watch and between the links is decent, which are two important factors in the overall comfort of the watch. The 3-link style is actually really slick. All of the links have a brushed finish with polished chamfers, and then while the mid links stay the same size, the outer links taper dramatically, which creates the overall taper of the bracelet. Now, the clasp shares the same brushed finish with polished chamfers, and at first I panicked because there was no visible micro adjust and there is no half links in this bracelet. However, what I discovered is if you depress the twin pushers that open the clasp, there are actually 3 quick adjust positions available. I was pretty surprised to find out Seiko had a quick adjustment system like this, but seems to keep it within their Astron line. I would love to see one of these clasps on my Seiko Sarks, for example. The scissor on this watch is also nicely milled, and then sizing is accomplished with the dread pin and collar system, but I do have a video that will walk you through that process that I'll pop a link to in the upper right hand corner. Overall, the bracelet is quite comfortable, and if you haven't worn a titanium watch before, they tend to be more comfortable overall just due to how light they are. This watch uses the 8B63 movement, which is a world time solar radio signal movement. Now, this is quartz with a stated accuracy of plus or minus 15 seconds a day when it isn't syncing. When it's successfully syncing every night, it's basically accurate to atomic time. It will charge to full in 30 hours of sunlight, and that charge should power the watch for about 9 months. Now, if you live in Japan, China, the US, or Europe, this watch will attempt to sync to atomic time using a radio signal. In the US, this radio station is in Fort Collins, Colorado, and the approximate effective distance is 1,500 kilometers. Now, I live in California, and my watch does indeed radio sync approximately every other day. This watch will attempt to sync 3 times starting at 2 a.m. This movement is also a world time watch. You can adjust the main set of hands to any time zone, and then there's also a 24-hour sub-register with its own hour and minute hand that can be set independently from the main hands, so you can display 2 time zones simultaneously on the watch. Finally, the movement also displays the day and date. Now, I'll probably make a separate video to show all the functions and features and how to operate this watch at some point in the future. The 7mm screw down crown is nicely knurled but unsigned. The threading and unthreading action is fairly smooth, and I would expect it to break in over time. What is kind of funny about this watch is you never actually use the crown to adjust the hands. All of those adjustments are done with the buttons above and below the crown. crown, and oftentimes this watch will just set itself, for example, when it's receiving the radio signal. However, the 3 crown positions will change the functions of those buttons. Now, this crystal uses Seiko's super clear coating, which is a technology I wish they would use more often. This coating is also used on the Seiko SBXY055 that I have, and it's by far the best anti-reflective coating I have ever seen. It basically makes the crystal invisible. Why Seiko doesn't use this coating on all of their watches, or at least in their mid to high tier price points, really baffles me. This coating really lets you appreciate the dial in indices in a way that you have to see in person to fully appreciate. The bezel is ceramic and has the different cities for each of the time zones etched into it. It appears they used a gray color for these, which means you'll never really notice them unless you are looking for them, and I think that really preserves the overall look of the watch. Okay, so let's get to this dial. First, the chapter ring is black and has dashes, and then a few letters related to the operation of the watch for each of the minute positions, with larger dashes for the hour positions. The indices are actually floating ever so slightly above the dial and are blacked out just like the rest of the case. They have an incredible iridescent effect along the top of the index, which is similar to the effect you'll get off a Grand Seiko. The edges are faceted and polished, and despite being blacked out, these indices play with light in fantastic ways due to this geometry and mix of finishes. There's also a plot of lume on each of the indices. Now, the next layer of the dial is actually above the star field, and this is where Seiko is applied, and then the frame for the date at 3, the sub-register for the second time zone at 6, and the retrograde indicator for the date of the week all reside. Now, all of these are nicely finished with the combination of brushed and polished blacked out surfaces. And then below that level is where the deep purple dial is found and is also highlighted with a star field of white and blue stars. Now, this overall effect is incredibly executed and gives the dial an incredible feeling of depth. Finally, there's some striations in the dial, which I assume are related to the solar cells. The hour and minute hands are gabled down the center and use the same trick Seiko uses on their newer Prospects models, where one half is polished and one half is brushed. This will help the hands catch light in different lighting conditions, and in combination with the lume in the center, make the hands very legible overall. They both have long counterbalances, and the minute hand is plenty long, reaching all the way out to the chapter ring. The second hand has a black counterbalance and is white past the hand stack. Now, registration on this watch is perfect with all of the hands, in part because this watch sets the hands by itself. I'm not sure if the second hand will always be perfect because of that, but if someone knows for sure, please let me know. Now, we don't have that much surface area for the lume, but it is Seiko Lume Bright, so it is strong and lasts a long time. And then I really like that they use this blue color. And here is the watch on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. I do feel it wears smaller than you would expect for a 43mm watch. So pros and cons, starting with the pros. Well, obviously the dial is the star of the show, but I also think the finishing on the hands and indices is stellar. All of these details really shine because of that super clear coating on the crystal. I can't really overstate how invisible the crystal looks from certain angles because of that coating. Next, the blacked out titanium looks excellent, and the watch is really light and comfortable. Finally, the quick adjust feature on the bracelet is a nice bonus because I didn't realize that was something the watch would come with. As for cons, well, the radio sync can be a massive pro or con depending if it works for you. If the watch is reliably syncing, you basically have an atomic time accurate perpetual calendar on your wrist. But if the watch cannot sync, you're sort of paying for an expensive movement you can't take full advantage of. I seem to be getting a sync about every other day, which is fine as long as it doesn't fail to sync at the end of the month and then the date gets desynced. Now, you can force it to sync or manually change the date, but ideally you just want it to reliably sync every night. Second, the bracelet is just okay. I feel like this is a major weak point on so many Seikos. While it's great to have the quick adjustment, I think having a few half links in addition would help you get an even better size, and then it'd also be nice if the links had slightly better articulation between them and across the back of the watch. The last con is just personal preference for me, but I wish this watch was 41mm rather than 43mm in diameter. While I do feel like I pull it off, I think for me, this watch would be the perfect size at 41 millimeters. As for comparables, there's quite a few options in the radio and GPS syncing universe. Now, obviously, the Seiko Astron line is going to have a ton of those options, but for a little variety, you can check out Citizen Atessa. They have a titanium radio syncing watch that's about the same price as this Astron, and then they also have some less expensive models. You can get a titanium radio syncing model, such as the CB1120 World Time, for around $200 to $300. And then Casio has a line called Wave Scepter, but you'll want to be careful and make sure you get one that can sync to the Colorado signal if you're in the United States. But these can be had for less than $100 and are a really fun digital watch option if you really want that radio syncing. So there you have it, the Seiko Astron SBXY055. What do you think about this watch? Let me know in the comment section below. As always, if you're enjoying the contents of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. That's all for this time. My name is Jason, and you have been watching Just Watches.